Boehner's decision to step down will lead to an intense scramble to fill the leadership vacuum. House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy is next in line and is expected to serve as the next speaker. However, disagreements among the Republican ranks could make that an uphill battle. The question now is, how will this shakeup affect the GOP and the race for the White House? Joining me now from Washington, D.C., Associate Editor at the Weekly Standard, Ethan Epstein. Ethan, thanks so much for coming by. And what seems to be the inside politics reaction to Speaker Boehner's decision, or shall we call him the Weeper of the House?
Yeah, the outgoing weeper of the House, his announced resignation, I think the initial response was surprise and shock, but then you wait about 30 seconds and most people all of a sudden weren't that surprised. I mean, this was a guy that didn't appear to thrive in the job, didn't appear to enjoy the job, and didn't really have any sort of strong ideological commitments that would seem to keep him there. So, you know, we've put two and two together, and it's made sense that he would want to step down. Well,
this is interesting because I'm reading that Speaker Boehner wanted to step down in 2014, but yet Cantor lost his seat, so therefore there was no one to ascend to the throne, if you will. So that went by the boards, and then it was sort of opined that maybe he was waiting for his planned trip by the Pope to come, and then he would throw in the towel after that. Well, nice of him to let everybody know so we could plan for it.
Boehner does not strike me as a guy who's a very strategic thinker, not a very long-term thinker. So I heard him say at his news conference this morning that he decided to resign this morning when he was saying his prayers. I believe him. I don't think that he thought he was going to do this yesterday. I think it's almost on a whim. He's like, you know, I'm kind of fed up with this. I'll quit.
Really? That is amazing. So it didn't take very long for the president. Yeah, impulsive, exactly. The president, though, did react today to Speaker Boehner's decision to resign, his announcement that he would resign. But in so doing, he just could not help, as Nancy Pelosi could not help, pile on over the so-called government shutdown that the president may impose should they not be able to come to some sort of decision on the Planned Parenthood funding. So how does that play into all of this, Ethan?
Well, that was a bizarre little jab that both Mrs. Pelosi and President Obama took, given that it seems pretty clear that one of the consequences of Boehner resigning is the Planned Parenthood funding will stand and there will be no shutdown. So it seemed like sort of a gratuitous, cheap shot way to score political points. It almost makes you think that the Democrats wanted a government shutdown in the first place so they could crow about it. Now that they're not getting the shutdown, they're still going to point fingers and blame the Republicans. Very graceless, I thought.
Well, you know, did we expect anything else? I just have that to add to it.
But knock me over with a feather.
I know. So, but no, Ethan, walk us through why it is that there's not going to be any government shutdown. There's not going to be any problem with the Planned Parenthood funding. Why is that? Because, after all, let's face it, the guy left in part because of the brouhaha, the political imbroglio, if you will, of all this stuff, this planned, the Planned Parenthood stuff. What gives?
Well, so what Boehner has been reluctant to do this whole time is bring a bill to the floor that will pass with a majority of Democrats and just a few Republicans, which is what a continuing resolution that will include Planned Parenthood funding will do. So now that he no longer feels any political pressure, that's what he's going to do. You know, the right-wing side of the Republican caucus can't threaten him anymore because they can't say, you know, he's already said, you can't fire me, I quit, effectively. So that's why the government probably won't shut down.
Don't you think it was a bit ouchy, that whole Family Values Summit meeting where they get a big long standing O when they find out that Speaker Boehner is going to leave his job? I mean, ow.
It was hysterical, and I wonder if Rubio had anticipated that, but it was this sort of spontaneous, I heard you played the clip a moment ago, that sort of spontaneous jump for joy. It took me aback, I'll tell you.
Now, how hard was it for him to hold his caucus together? I read pieces that say, well, it was very difficult for Speaker Boehner to hold his caucus together. You know, it seems to me that the better part of valor would have been listening to his more conservative compatriots, his cohorts in the House, and maybe he wouldn't have had as many problems as he had.
That's a fair point, and I think that, and that gets back to something that I said earlier, which Boehner does not strike me as a very ideological guy at all. He strikes me more as someone that sort of enjoyed being in power, enjoys the game of politics, enjoys all the sort of thing that most of the citizens actually are kind of sick of. Therefore, you're right, he probably might have thrived if he had actually let the ideological leaders take a little more of a leading role, and you know, then there would have been a lot less conflict, I think.
Does he get to take the tanning bed with him when he leaves office? I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
I'd recommend he just move to Florida and get a more natural looking one.
Ethan, thanks.